Okay, hello everyone and welcome to our press conference on human rights defenders and their lived online and offline realities in the Middle East and North Africa. Apologies for the delay due to technical difficulties, so thank you so much for sticking around with us. My name is Marwa Fatafta and I lead Access Now's work in the Middle East and North Africa region as the MENA Policy Manager. In recent years, we have been witnessing unprecedented levels of repression and attacks on human rights defenders, journalists, lawyers, civil society organizations, and activists in the region, from extrajudicial killings to pretrial detentions, harassment, smear campaigns, and the denial of basic rights. Many governments in the region have shown brutal vindictiveness against those who dare to rise up and speak truth to power, often with anti-fake news legislations or cybercrime laws. To highlight some of the freedom of expression issues and the online and offline realities of internet freedom in the region, I'm extremely honored to moderate the conversation, originally with three remarkable and brave women activists whom I deeply admire and respect for the courageous and crucial work that they do, and who will share with us stories from the ground with a special focus on Tunisia and Saudi Arabia and Egypt. So I'd like to welcome our speaker, Emna Mizouni. She's a Tunisian activist and digital communications expert. She's also a board member of Access Now. We also had with us Lina Atalla, the co-founder and chief editor of Mada Masr, and Lina Al-Hadloul, a Saudi lawyer and activist, and the sister of women rights defender Lujain Al-Hadloul, but unfortunately we lost them due to last-minute circumstances. Before I give the floor to our only speaker for today, Emna, let me quickly run you through how we're organizing the session. So we'll give the floor to Emna to share her experiences and talk about the situation of human rights defenders in Tunisia, but also more widely in the region for 15 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for questions and answers from the audience. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box on the platform. We'll be collecting those and answer your questions later on in the session. Also, please note that this is a public session, and it will be later streamed on YouTube. So please feel free to tweet or share on your social media channels. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Emna to introduce yourself and then go directly into the conversation.
Sure, thank you so much. It's a huge pleasure for me to be part of you today. Actually, to be part of this experience, first as a board member of Access Now, but also as an admirer of the interesting and amazing work that the Access Now team is doing globally and in our region as well. So thank you very much for making this RightsCon happen. Thank you very much for shedding light on the importance of the situation of the activists in the MENA region. And to this, I would move to, instead of presenting myself, I would say I'm just an activist, I'm a citizen of Tunisia. And I'm very, very eager on following what is happening in the region, not only in my country. And I would like to talk about the situation. Let's take it from like the general aspect of it. The situation is we've been part of a tremendous change in the last 10 years, a change in the society, economy, at regional basis. It's like at the regional level, there is a huge change between countries, the relations between them, but also there is something very, very important. We're now more relying on tech platforms and on digital. So that is somehow is shifting our life as we knew it 10 years ago to something very new. Something that we used, for example, in Tunisia, we relied on the use of Facebook, for example, to circulate and relay the information and the news about the uprising in Tunisia. Now we're facing a new way of change within the policies of Facebook, within the way of communication between the government and people between themselves, citizens between themselves, in using those platforms. So the situation is not very different in other countries. As activists, we rely on the ground a lot. We do activities on the ground, but also we rely on the digital platforms, which makes something, a platform like RightsCon, a very important place to debate and discuss what's happening in online and offline, because they are like very linked. So that I would like to go into specific examples from Tunisia and go to the region. But from Tunisia, let's start with a very recent case, an attack on someone who shared a sarcastic post on Facebook. Now we're seeing like bloggers, they're no longer those who are holding blogs, but those who are even posting on Facebook in Tunisia and other countries as well. A blogger called Emna Shargi has been targeted for her views, for being skeptical and for making fun, I quote, for making fun of the religion of verses of the Quran. She literally used the same way of the Quran to write down a sarcastic text for Corona, about the coronavirus. That led to a huge attack on her. And it went out from the social media, from Facebook to the court, to a life threat to her, to herself and her family. This is the situation. And this is not an isolated situation, because if we move to people who don't share the same views as ourselves, who are posting about politics or certain views on social media, they are targeted. Those who are taking the streets for certain topics, they are targeted for that. And we've seen a lot of hate campaigns. We've seen a lot of targeted campaigns that went from the from the online to the offline. So this is the current situation. I could give another example of a friend of mine, a colleague, who was part of a movement, a political movement in Tunisia. He was the speaker, the communications person of that movement, and they went into the parliamentarian elections. He was targeted, and now if you Google his name, Hamza Kabar, on Facebook, you would find up to 3,000 posts attacking him. This is the situation right now. It's disinformation, it's misinformation, of course, and that is a huge topic to talk about. But targeting people for their activism is a constant reaction to everybody taking the civic space. And this is so alarming. If we rely on the gain of Tunisia's revolution, and if we say that we gained freedom of expression, we gained freedom of speech in media, unfortunately, this is not the case, really, because if we take those cases, they're not individual cases, they are very significant. Those are people that I know about. Those are people who had the chance to have people defending them or talking about them. But there are other people, they were arrested and put in prison from 6 months up to 2 years for the sake of revealing information or talking about certain topics, political topics in Tunisia. So this is the situation right now. It's no longer really that freedom of expression. And if we take the gender aspect of it, if you're a woman, you're targeted if you take the civic space, if you speak out. And I would give the example of the late Lina Ben-Hindi, who was like during her lifetime, I think since she was nominated to the Nobel Peace Prize, she was under constant threat for her views. So this is one of the situations that we talk about not enough, unfortunately. And if we go out from Tunisia and see other countries from the region, I would jump to Saudi Arabia, because this is a very important case for myself. And unfortunately, we don't have Lina Al-Hadloul today with us to talk about it, but I'll raise the topic of Lujain Al-Hadloul, who's been tortured in prison. She's been in detention for more than 2 years right now. No news about her for the last 2 months, knowing that COVID-19 is in Saudi Arabia. She's likely to have it in prison. We have no idea, no update about her. But if I put it into context, let's say, Lujain was arrested for one reason, for speaking out, for using her fame, being a social media influencer, to raise the issues and talk about the issues targeting women, women's rights in Saudi Arabia, violence against women, the male guardianship, and of course, the right to drive. When they were granted the right to drive, she was behind the bars, and she was subject to torture, and she was subject to a smearing campaign, not only during her detention, but way before. I guess one of the people who received the highest number of death threats and other disgusting, let's say, messages from the people, like very, very disrespectful type of messaging and smearing, was Lujain Al-Hadloul for her activism, her peaceful activism, and she was using the online platforms. So this is the way. If we are talking about our work, if we're not only talking, but if we're highlighting certain topics, we're subject to threats, we're subject to attacks, and this is, I would say, this is becoming very institutionalized. It's not only attacks from unknown people, it's not only hate campaigns online, but it goes to arrest, like detention, arresting the activists. And we have plenty of examples from the region. It's so unfortunate that we have brilliant people and brilliant activists who are able to live up this region to a better place. However, they're detained. We can give plenty of examples. Other than Lujain Al-Hadloul, a lot of women and amazing men, they are detained in Saudi Arabia for their views. Not only Saudi Arabia, if we take the example of Egypt, and again, unfortunately, we don't have Lina Atallah with us, but Egypt, they have plenty of people behind the bars for the sake of speaking up. It's not acceptable, I guess. Their countries are losing them. We're losing faith in the system if we continue in having this situation. Lately, one of the biggest cases that I think even The Guardian wrote about this is the TikTok girls in Egypt. Random girls who are not activists, just girls using TikTok, they are sentenced to 2 years with a fine up to 300K Egyptian pound. It's insane. For what reason? For the family values? Is that like a context? There is a kind of a big fear from the systems, I guess, toward those activists and those social media influencers. So we're facing those very, very organized campaigns online to smear all the activists and people who have different views. And at the same time, we're facing legal threats as well. So this is quite the situation around the region. This is from the side of the activists, but also those who are talking about, for example, let's say the example of misinformation. If you're talking about misinformation, you would find a lot of people shutting you up, a little bit of if known in some cases, cooperation with the platforms, between the platforms, I mean, mainly Facebook and Twitter as the biggest platforms that we use in this region, and their policies with the civil society. So if we're not heard, if we're not in the table, if we're not discussing policies, if we're not highlighting and flagging the situation and those targeted campaigns against activists, I guess this threat will follow. That starts online and it follows offline. And there is, like, I would say, the legal aspect. I'm not an expert in the legal aspect, but I rely a lot on my colleagues and especially on the views of Access Now and this. It's very important to highlight that the legal system is not cooperative, or at least the existing texts right now, they're not very in our favor. When I say our favor, I mean activists. It would be good to hear other experts and other activists from the region, other journalists talking about the situation. But it's also very, very good to engage in a discussion like that, to denounce. And as any misinformation, any smearing campaign would start online, I believe our role as activists is to counter that. To report those hate tweets or posts or comments. Our role is to denounce this, to come together as activists, forget about our different backgrounds and come all together to denounce this and speak for the others who are unfortunately behind the bars.
Thank you so much, Amna, for sharing the different stories. And I know that there are too many cases to cover, but I want to pick on something that you've shared that I really love, is that often human rights defenders that are persecuted in our region, they're often portrayed as victims of brutal, senseless regimes, which is true in a way, but they're also brilliant minds that we're losing in our communities. And I mean, look no further at the case of Ala Abdel Fattah, who is an Egyptian human rights defender, activist, blogger, and also an active member of our community who has been part of the RightsCon series since I think the beginning, since 2011, and unfortunately he's currently behind bars right now. Ala has been arrested under almost every president in his lifetime. So he was arrested under the presidency of Hosni Mubarak, then later on Mohamed Morsi, and currently now also under the Sisi regime. He served a sentence for 5 years, and upon his release, he was also asked to serve another 5 years of having to check in at a police station every single day from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. And unfortunately, last year in September 2019, he was detained again. And since the start of the pandemic, COVID-19, his family has lost also connection to him. In March, they haven't been able to provide him with necessary medical and hygiene and food supplies. They haven't been able to communicate with him either by sending letters to the prison or receiving letters from him. And he has been or was on hunger strike in April. And the situation continues. The same story with Lujain El-Hadloul, also who is spending time. Unfortunately, right now, we also don't know much about her situation, and she has been subject to torture and sexual harassment in the prison. And given the situation of the prisons in our region, and I would say the inhumane conditions, it's really scary during the COVID-19 pandemic to just imagine what is happening of the spread of the disease, and the fact that those people don't have access to information on how to protect themselves on the disease, on how their families are doing. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do this press conference is that often we are faced with this press fatigue, that we know these stories, we know the story of Ala Abdel Fattah, we know the story what's happening in Tunisia and what's happening in the Middle East, and there is this fatigue about covering the same story again and again. But what we want to emphasize here, that these are stories of real people. The suffering of the families is real, whether it's the story of Lujain, and we really would have loved to have her sister with us to share the story of the family, and also the same with the family of Ala Abdel Fattah, and also the families of thousands of others who are serving terms in prison and on false charges, and they shouldn't be in prison in the first place. I mean, also to add to Ala's case, his sister Sana is also currently detained just for the exercise of waiting outside with her mother, outside of the prison authorities, waiting to receive a letter from Ala. They've been going to the prison on a daily basis, and rather than listening to their demands and implementing these fundamental basic rights, the Egyptian authorities, they have actually been harassed. They have been brutally attacked by female thugs. It's also a tactic used by the Egyptian regime to intimidate activists, without leaving fingerprints of their security apparatus. And then on the next day, when they wanted to go to the public prosecutor's office to file a complaint, Sana Saif has been detained, or actually kidnapped, by a civilian by men in civilian clothing, pushed into a van and driven away, only to appear later in front of the same office, the public prosecutor's office, detained on charges related to misuse of social media, spreading misinformation and fake news about COVID-19, and inciting to terrorism. Again, going to the point you mentioned regarding how legislations in the region, in many countries in the region, obviously it differs from one country to the other, but there is that trend and pattern of using anti-fake news and cybercrime laws and incitement to violence and terrorism to silence people and silence activists. And unfortunately, it's no longer about activists anymore. As you mentioned, the case of the TikTok girls, many governments in the region are appointing themselves as the moral police of people and exercising an authority to tell individuals what should be said and what shouldn't be said on social media and on the internet, based on very vague values such as family values or good ethics and public order and so on. I'll stop here and I'll open the floor for your questions, and then I think we have about 10-15 minutes. So I will look to see if there are any questions. All right.
I may add something very important to what you were saying. We're not talking about those examples as the only examples, like Enna Shargi or Hamza Kabar or Lujain Hatloul or Ala Abdel Fattah, which is a very, very famous case. But those are people who are known to us, known to the international community or the national community. But they hide hundreds of other people across the region who are detained. And if we're speaking and using their names, on behalf of them, I guess we're highlighting the issue of the activists across the region. If we're asking to free Lujain al-Hatloul, for example, we're not asking only for Lujain, but the other women activists like Samar Badawi or Nasima Seda in Saudi Arabia. If we're asking about Ala Abdel Fattah, we're asking about every other person in Egypt who is detained for no reason. Who is simply detained because either posting on Facebook or using TikTok as a random person, or a person who was kidnapped. There is plenty of cases in Egypt that we're using those names as symbols. They are our symbols to address hate campaigns and to address disinformation. And also torture and sexual violence against the detainees. And one of the important questions to put here, how they are coping with COVID-19 in prisons. How is the hygiene over there? In the case of Loujain Hadloul and the other Saudi activists detained, it's a big question mark because we lost connection. At least the family of Loujain lost her connection for the last 2 months. No phone calls. Before that, there was only one phone call, and before that, it was a month without no news. Knowing that since the pandemic started, they stopped the in-person visits. So it's a lot of big question marks. And again, we should not stop. Our role as activists is not to stop talking about those cases and denounce those practices of threats, smearing campaigns, disinformation against activists, and also to call on the tech platforms to be more cooperative in terms of taking down some violent comments, let's say.
Thank you very much, Emma. We have one question. I guess it's related to taking action. What can be done? What are the proposed adaptations to this reality? And what should be the goal at this stage when international support for these values are waning?
So, I mean, if we take one action at a time, it would be not letting them down first, speaking up on their behalf, making sure they're not forgotten. I so much believe in this power, the invisible power of when we speak about them, they will definitely end up here because they have no access to information, no access to news most of the time. But they rely on us. And if we keep speaking and we keep addressing, and if we have an international support from different organizations and different governments, that would be good. That would be very, very good to their cases and to avoid having more activists detained. It's so, at certain times, we feel so hopeless, very hopeless when we say, for example, that Loujain has been detained for 2 years and we did not do much. We still feel we did not do much for her. And especially knowing that the person who observed her torture is free. It's unacceptable. But what we can do is we still have to fight and to talk about her and to ask and seek the help of the international community. Sorry. And it's very important that organizations like Access Now and other organizations would be talking and stepping and supporting those activists. It's very important also to support activists who are under threat right now, who are receiving, like being targeted for their activism online by a hate campaign. It's very important to give them support, legal support, in certain cases, financial support or asylum in other cases. But it's not, let's not wait until they are arrested, let's say. Let's be there for them.
Yeah, I want to build up on what you mentioned. I think many regimes in the region bet on the waiting game that people will, eventually give up hope, and because the situation looks so hopeless sometimes that they think, people will eventually forget and they can get away with their impunity and without being held accountable for their human rights abuses and violations. So I guess, we have also another question asking the same, like what can we do to defend human rights defenders and activists? And I guess you've answered this question already by raising our voices and to continuously raise these issues whenever we can and in every venue and platform that we have. I have a second question also from Kindel Selsisto. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Does MENA also have trolls claiming that cancel culture is depressing mainstream views? If so, have you found strategies to push back? I would also want to add an additional question to this. We've witnessed in the beginning of this year also governments using troll campaigns on social media to call for the arrest and the prosecution of certain activists that look at the surface that they are just normal people, normal citizens asking for the prosecution of a certain individual for violating whatever they deem should not be violated. So for example, public order or good values, etc. But actually these are being orchestrated by certain governments in order to legitimize the arrest. So you know that this is what people were calling for. So do you think that this is a pattern across the region, or is it to certain specific cases? The one I mentioned is in Saudi Arabia. I can't recall the name of the activist at the moment, but she was detained, I think, in April this year, using this tactic.
So I think it's a practice across certain countries in the region. It's not in every country. But those trolls, if we take the case when it happens to be elections, we've seen that those trolls from other countries, they were targeting Tunisia, for example. And if we link this to the taking down of the certain Facebook accounts in Tunisia in May 2020, there was a link between some accounts, not all of them, and a company, a marketing and communications company in Tunisia that did the same, more or less, in the Francophone countries in Africa. They're using trolls, and for the time being, if we follow the political scene in Tunisia, trolls are targeting certain figures who are not activists for this time. They're targeting political persona for like certain agendas. It's becoming something across the region. In other countries like Saudi Arabia, amid the detention of Lujain al-Hadloul and at the time Aziz al-Yusuf, Iman al-Nafjan, and the other men detained with them, there were trolls using I forgot the hashtag. I think they were using a certain hashtag. Some of those accounts, they have bot behavior, but the others, they looked like normal accounts, but they were only used to attack the detained activists. And that did not stop with that campaign against Lujain al-Hadloul and the others, but it continued to target other activists. We rely a lot on picking that behavior, being aware of it as civil society and addressing it, reporting those accounts, and reaching out to the platforms with a list of the accounts and an action, a list of action points to be done. It's very important, I guess, if we see that as individuals, as activists, not only in the frame of, let's say, organizations or international organizations, but also as individuals, is to report those trolls. It's our duty, I guess, to make sure that we address this. There is no concrete strategy for that. We're not going, if they go low, we don't go low like them. There is no, for the time being, there is no strategy to counter this, but denouncing it, writing and collaborating with the tech platforms. I'm very skeptical on adopting laws in that sense, because they can be misused in certain ways and under certain circumstances against non-bot behavior, for example. So let's use civic actions instead of legal actions in that sense. But it's very, very good to raise this question.
Thank you. We have more questions coming in. So we have a question from Tariq Radwan. He says, related to policing speech on the internet, countering smear campaigns and disinformation online requires massive time and resources. How can activists with limited means address the root problem?
That's a very good question, and it's very, very realistic. Even Facebook failed in taking down certain comments or addressing or picking certain campaigns. And here I would give an example from Tunisia of one of the activists at the time, I think 2 years ago. She was targeted by a smearing campaign, a hate campaign. She's a gender activist. Her name is Fadil Sharfuddin, and we had she was subject to that campaign, but for 2 years she did not notice that there was a huge amount of targeted posts against her, that she did not pay attention to them until she was physically targeted in the streets, and she linked all of those incidents all together. And of course, I guess we rely, as she did at the time, on certain mechanisms like Access Now's help team, which they were there for her to support her in that campaign. But also there are other organizations to do that. It's amazing how they can do this work. It's amazing in a bad way, not in a good way, of course, how they can allocate that time and money for that. So it's very, very difficult for us as activists to counter it. But if we work in communities, if we work all together, individuals, activists, and organizations, national and international organizations, it's very, very important. We will reach a point where we can have limit that kind of practice.
Thanks. You mentioned the helpline. I think it's suitable to mention a few words about our helpline, digital security helpline. We offer free service 24/7, a day, a week to activists, civil society organizations, journalists, and human rights defenders who need help with their digital security or under attack. If you need that help, you can email at help@accessnow.org, and our team would be able to help you and provide assistance. We have a follow-up question from Kendall on the troll armies or troll accounts. She says, reporting those troll accounts, does it work, and are they responsive? And I guess they it refers to social media companies.
So in some cases, yeah, they are responsive. In other cases, no. Let's not take the current situation with the COVID-19. The responsiveness is way less than the usual. But in certain cases, we collaborated with the tech companies as organizations, as not only one organization, but different organizations who are working on the topic of content moderation, and they were responsive to a certain extent. I would love to see them more responsive, and I would love to see them take the initiative of checking certain accounts with the experts, with the organizations who are working in the ground. So for example, if I give the case of Facebook, they have trusted partners in certain countries. For example, in Tunisia, they have certain trusted partners. And I would love to see Facebook reaching out to those trusted partners before taking the decision of taking down certain accounts, for example. So there would be limitation of the collateral damage, let's say. But they should do more because as they move, those trolls and those units, at certain point, they are government units, they are companies, startups who are using different mechanisms and they know how Facebook operates, they know how Twitter operates, so they can navigate those systems, let's say. It would be good to keep working with the people on the ground who have understanding of the situations happening in the ground. If we're talking about Tunisia, there are trusted partners in Tunisia, there are trusted organizations at national level that they can reach out to work with, in addition to the governmental institutions who would help in certain cases. In other countries as well. I guess Access Now is a good key contact across the region of the MENA region, but in other regions as well. It's not only the MENA. This situation, we have seen different points, common points between MENA region and other regions across the globe.
It's actually very important to note, because indeed this is not only special to the MENA region, unfortunately. We have one last question before we end our press briefing from Tom. He's asking, is there anything in particular that men can do to support your work more? And he says, I'm just baffled hearing your stories. I actually like this question.
It's a very good question. It would be men behaving as humans. It's like, it's really, really good that you give the floor and you see the other, how we're suffering. And to a certain extent, if we take the case of men activists and women activists, and given the circumstances across our region, only women would be arrested for the family values, for example. I bet it would be really crazy from a government to arrest somebody for family values, unless that person is really has really committed a crime. But it's very, very important to understand how women are being treated and not be part of relaying the information or the news about women. Support women, stop harassment, address it. When another man is talking and harassing women, stand by the women. Don't stand by the men, by manhood. Don't mansplain women online. Try to avoid that. This is very, very important. And thank you so much for your question. Because we cannot do that as women only. I truly believe that men and women should work together toward a better understanding, a safer internet. So thank you very much, and bring more men like you to support women, and you won't be disappointed.
This brings us to really a good end to our press meeting. I want to thank you so much, Emna, for all your insightful conversation. And before I end, actually, I would like to read a couple of lines from an open letter that we received from the sister of Ala Abdel Fattah, also a human rights defender, Muna Saif, and I read, I quote, she says, both Sana and Ala are in prison. They and thousands of prisoners are at risk facing the combined danger of an epidemic and a brutal, senseless regime. Please speak up on their behalf. Every voice counts. So indeed, every voice counts. Your voice counts, our voice counts. And in the coming days during RightsCon, we will be launching a joint civil society campaign in support of Ala and the many other prisoners in Egypt. So if you are an organization and you would like to join, please reach out to us. If you are an individual, please use your voice on social media or by writing to your representative to stand up in solidarity of those who are being silenced behind bars. Thank you again, everyone, for your participation. I hope it was an eye-opening session for many of you, and enjoy the rest of RightsCon and take care.